Finding a morel honeypot, it's like winning the lottery. It's like Pete Davidson dating Ariana Grande or pulling Excalibur out of a rock. I mean, it's mythical, it's maddening, and if you haven't figured it out yet, it's mushrooms. But it's not just dumb luck. Today, we're gonna level up. We're gonna decode this forest and start hunting morels like your cousin Randy. Only this time the F-150 and the laundry baskets are totally optional. This is morel hunting east of the Rockies. Read the forest, find the morels. Before we start breaking down the forest, we should probably be clear on one thing. What are we actually looking for? Because when people say morels, they're not just talking about one mushroom. They're talking about an entire group of mushrooms, an entire genus. And if you're new, I don't want you wandering around out here thinking that everything that looks weird and wrinkly and like a little brain is fair game. So let's get you oriented first. What's out here and what you're likely to find and how not to get fooled. Because once you understand that, the rest of this video, the trees, the timing, the habitat, the patterns, that's what's gonna help you actually find them. Quick reality check. When we say morels, we're not talking about one mushroom. We're talking about a whole genus called Morchella. And yes, people will argue about how to pronounce that, because that's what people do. You can say Morchella or you can say Morchella. But honestly, if you say it confidently, people will assume you're right. Now, here's the part that matters for new hunters. You don't need to memorize every species. Recently, DNA has shown us that there's a lot more morel species than we used to think there were. But in the eastern woods here, I really just want you to recognize 3 practical morphology types that you're likely to run into. All right, guys, black morels, they are usually the early ones. They're darker in color, they're more conical shaped, and the ridges on them, they run more vertically with like a laddered look to them. These are your classic early season black morels. Then you got the yellow morels. These are just the quintessential morel that you think about. They're usually bigger, they're definitely lighter, kind of rounder overall. And the pits and ridges tend to look more irregular and less neatly vertical. This is the group a lot of people are finding around dying elms, ash, and old orchard country. So then you got half-free morels. These show up early too. They're usually smaller, and the big cue is the cap attachment. So the cap is attached only about halfway down the stem, not all the way to the bottom like yellows and blacks. So the top half looks like a little thimble or a hoodie sitting on the stem. And that matters because people confuse these with other things all the time. Your buddy thinks he found a peckerwood or a half-free, but if that cap's attached all the way down and the mushroom's fully hollow, that may just be a small yellow morel like Morchella americana, and not a half-free at all. The true half-free pattern is that partial attachment. Now, let's make the safety part stupid simple. You got 2 big lookalikes you got to worry about out here. You got Gyromitra, it's the false morel. Everybody worries about that one. This thing usually looks more wrinkled, folded, it's brain-like. It doesn't have that true honeycomb morel look to it. And when you cut it open, it's not clean and hollow on the inside. It's got little chambers throughout it. Now here's where it gets a little more complicated than the internet makes it sound. These species can contain gyromitrin, a compound that breaks down into something your body doesn't really handle very well. Now here's the part people do not tell clearly. Some people do eat these. In certain parts of the world, they're even considered choice edibles after special preparation. But, and this matters, the long-term toxicology here, it's still very poorly understood. There's real uncertainty around cumulative exposure, individual sensitivities, and what repeated low doses of gyromitrin might actually be doing over time. So for me, it's a hard line. I do not recommend eating any gyromitra. I do not eat any gyromitra. If you're curious about this nuance, because there is a nuance, I'm gonna do a more advanced deep dive on this whole topic in an upcoming video. For now, learn to recognize them, the little brains that they are, respect them, and don't confuse them with true morels. Then you got Verpas. That's the one that messes with people looking for half-free morels. With Verpa, the cap hangs from the very top like a little skirt, and the inside's often stuffed with cottony pith. A true half-free is still a Morchella, hollow inside with a cap attached partway down the stem, not just dangling from the top. So here's the simplest field test I got for you guys. Cut it in half lengthwise. If it's a true morel, it will be hollow from the top to the bottom, tip to base. If it's a half-free, it should still be hollow, but the cap only connects partway down. If it's hanging only from the top and stuffed with cottony stuff, think Verpa. If it looks like a weird brain and the inside is dense and funky, think Gyromitra. That's enough for now. We'll go deeper into species and tree-specific ID in future videos. For this one, I just want to leave you with thinking about being able to say, that's a black, that's a yellow, that's a half-free. And that thing is suspicious enough that I'm not messing with it. Because once you can do that and combine it with trees, timing, and habitat, you are way ahead of most new mushroom hunters. All right, if you want to stop getting skunked, step one is simple. Quit staring at the ground, guys. You got to start looking up once in a while, because out here, the trees, they're not just background. They're basically the landlords of the fungal underworld. They run the light, the moisture, the nutrients. They're the ones cutting the checks for Team Morchella. Now here's the cheat code most people miss. Morels don't hang with just any old tree. They got their favorites. So let's start with the biggest clue in the eastern woods. If you learn the right trees, the forest will stop feeling random. If you remember one tree from this entire video, it's gotta be elm trees, because elm is one of the best morel clues in the eastern woods. And yes, there are two main elms you're likely to run into out here. American elm, or Ulmus americana, and the slippery elm, Ulmus rubra. But here's the good news. For finding morels, you can treat them the same. So let's just learn how to recognize an elm, period. So look at the leaf, the jagged edges, and a crooked base. One side sits higher than the other. That uneven base, that's your giveaway. Now look at the veins. They run out from the center and branch towards the edge. That's called pinnate venation. You don't have to remember the term, just remember the pattern. Now, a quick level up if you want it. Rub the top of the leaf. If it feels rough like sandpaper, that's probably slippery elm. If it's smoother, that's American elm. But again, either way, you're in business. Now here's where it gets interesting. So elms, they don't just die, they kind of crash. You can thank Dutch elm disease for that one. The branches are dying, the bark is peeling in big sheets, the whole tree unraveling. And that 1 to 3 year window of decline, that's when morels show up. Not fresh dead, not completely rotted, that middle stage where nutrients are getting dumped into the soil. So if you're walking a floodplain or a slope and you see an elm that looks like it's having a bad year, you gotta slow down. That tree is trying to do you a favor. This ash tree right here, this is Fraxinus americana. It's a white ash. If you're a morel hunter, this tree practically throws up neon signs saying, come look for morels here. The bark forms classic diamond patterns, crisscross ridges, but the biggest clue is the branching. Ash trees have opposite branching. Very few trees in North America do this. If you see opposite branches in diamond bark, you're almost certainly looking at ash. Now here's the tragic twist. Thanks to the emerald ash borer, millions of ash trees are dying. Ecologically, it's devastating, but for fungi, it's opportunity. Morels often fruit under stressed or recently dead ash trees. So if you're standing under a dying ash with bark peeling off the trunk, please don't walk past that thing. You gotta slow down. You're in prime morel territory, guys. All right, guys, this right here, eastern cottonwood, Populus deltoides. It's one of the biggest trees in eastern North America. It is loud, it is proud. The leaves look like they're just applauding you for showing up. They love floodplains. That's where we're at right here. We're in a whole bunch of floodplains. You know, floodplains that got a little slope to them, that dry out, keep things interesting for them. And that is exactly where morels like to show up. So this habitat right here, prime time. In a week or two, I will be finding morels here for sure. This tree right here, this is a tulip poplar, Liriodendron tulipifera. It's one of the tallest hardwood trees in the eastern woods here. The leaves are the giveaway on this one. They got 4 lobes, they're symmetrical, they kind of look like a cat's face or like a weird alien spaceship. You know, so tulip poplars, they may not be the classic dying elm, dying ash tree kind of thing, but they show up again and again in places where I find morels. They like warm slopes, they like loamy soil, they definitely like second growth hardwood forests. So when tulip poplars show up and they're mixed in with some dead and dying ash or elm trees, slow down, you're probably getting real close. All right, so what do most of these trees have in common? They grow fast, they die young unfortunately, and they leave behind rich, disturbed soil. Exactly the kind of environment morels like. Now, we'll go deeper into tree ID in future videos, and if you're thirsty for more information, I mean, YouTube has probably got about 2,000 videos on identifying trees, so have at it. But for this video, I want to make sure new hunters understand this. There are trees to be on the lookout for. And these ones, these are the heavy hitters. So if the forest floor looks like my house after my kids had a sleepover, you're probably in the right spot. Just so we're clear, these trees, they're the party poopers. We're talking about beeches right here. We're talking about oaks. We're talking about hickory trees, dense stands of sugar maple. If the forest floor feels uptight, well-preserved, perfect, your morels probably already ghosted you. They're not there. These forests tend to build thicker, slow-rotting leaf litter and just more stable conditions, and morels usually do not like that. So once you know the right trees, the next question is obvious. Where do you even find woods like this? Because morels in the east usually are not mushrooms of deep, dark, untouched cathedral forests. They're mostly mushrooms of rich hardwood systems found in floodplains, slopes, second growth woods, maybe old orchards, and other places where the forest got just a little bit weird. And here's the shortcut. Morels love woods where something has happened. Now, if you're new, that sounds vague as hell. So let me make it concrete for you. What do I mean by something happened? I mean, something has changed in the forest. Maybe something opened it up, something stressed the trees, moved the soil, something caused the dumping of nutrients. Maybe something created a new edge of the forest. Something reset the clock. So that could be a tree dying, especially elm or ash trees, a floodplain shifting after high water and laying down fresh silt, a storm knocking trees down and opening up the canopy, an old field or farm edge growing back into hardwoods, an abandoned orchard slowly rotting back into the wild, or a slope where water drains, sunlight hits, and conditions change every few yards. But what all those places have in common is this. They're getting more light, more nutrients, there's more of a transition-y feel, right? And that's what morels respond to. Now compare that to the opposite. Big dark blocks of oak beech forest, maybe heavy hemlock forest, mature maple beech forest with thick, slow rotting leaves. Not much changing, not much opening up, not much going on. That's stable forest. And stable forest is usually not where morels shine. So before you ever leave the house, you can start narrowing down this from your couch. Open satellite view on Google Maps. Look for rivers, creeks, you know, that's floodplain. Look for broken forest edges where woods meet fields. Look for patchy, messy woods instead of one giant solid green blob. If it looks messy from above, that's interesting. If it looks like one big unbroken carpet of dark trees, you should probably keep scrolling because you're not really hunting forests. You're hunting terrain features inside forests. Old orchards and farmsteads, recent utility cuts, former fields turning back into woods, places where humans or weather have messed with the landscape. That's not damage for a morel hunter, that's opportunity. So stop asking, what woods am I gonna go to next? And start asking, where did something happen in woods that I can go check out? Good habitat's half the battle, right? Timing is the other half. Morels, they don't care what day it is. They don't care how warm your jacket feels. They move when the soil temperature says so. Around 4 inches deep, here's the rough pattern you're looking for. from 40 to say 50 degrees Fahrenheit, that's when you got the early scouts starting to wake up. 48 to 52, early black morels are showing up. 53 to 58, that's prime yellow season. And 60 and above, sorry guys, you're running out of time. Luckily, nature gives us clues. If you smell onion under your boots, you know, that's probably ramps. Black morels are clocking in. Bloodroot blooming, early black season. If you see May apples emerging, the yellow morels are probably getting warmed up. A full May apple canopy probably means that's the big yellow season. The forest is literally telling you when to hunt these things. You got the map now. You know how to read the trees. You know how to read these woods. And you know how to move with the season instead of against it. Spring waits for no man or mushroom. So get out here, read the forest, and go hunt like you know something, because now you do.